All right. Hello, everybody. I'm Paul Grand. I am the CEO here at MedTech Innovator. Welcome to our info session for MedTech Innovator's 2022 program. For those of you who haven't heard of MedTech Innovator before, I'm going to tell you all about MedTech Innovator. I'm going to take your questions throughout this discussion. I'm going to share some slides, which I have to do to give you a little bit of a background on MedTech Innovator and how this program works. I'm going to show you how the application process works. I'm going to talk about criteria, what we're looking for in a company, and most importantly, I think I'm going to answer your questions. So if you have questions, you'll see the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen in Zoom. All you have to do is click that, queue up a question for me, and I will answer it. That's the best way to do this. I'll be monitoring that Q&A box throughout the discussion today. If you put something into chat, I'll try and look there too. Usually that's more for something clarifying quickly. But if it's a question that you really want me to dig into, please put the question into the Q&A box. I'll make sure to watch that. All right, everybody. So again, welcome. Thank you for being here. If you're watching this recording later after the live Zoom, you're welcome to email me and I will be happy to answer your questions. You can email me at paul@medtechinnovator.org, or you can email our staff at support@medtechinnovator.org. So let's get into it now that you know how to ask questions, and we'll go ahead and share my slides. So as I mentioned, I'm gonna try and keep the talk part of this as brief as possible so we can do as much Q&A as I can. So let's begin by first just talking a little bit about MedTech Innovator and what we do as an entity and why you'd want to be part of MedTech Innovator in the first place. Down in the corner of the slide, you will see our hashtag that we use on LinkedIn, hashtag MedTech Innovator, or on Twitter, we're at MedTech Awards. So first and foremost, I want to make sure everyone understands that we are a nonprofit. MedTech Innovator was set up explicitly by the industry to find the world's leading startups and scale-ups and make sure you're successful at reaching patients and as much value as possible when you reach the market. That's our goal. And what you're looking at here on the screen is the graduating class of MedTech Innovator's 2021 program. So this was just a couple months ago in Minneapolis. And behind that, up on the top there, you see some of the products brought to market by their predecessors, by alumni of MedTech Innovator. And we're just trying to improve human health. That's what this is all about. Some quick statistics on MedTech Innovator that you might find interesting. So we at this point are the world's largest healthcare accelerator by far. That means our portfolio is the largest. We have 420 companies that have gone through MedTech Innovator and come out the other side. 95% of those companies are still in business or have been acquired after 9 years of being in business. That is just unprecedented. I can tell you as somebody who's been in this business for a long time, first as an entrepreneur, then as a venture capitalist, and now running MedTech Innovator, that this is something you just won't find anywhere else. 95% of our companies are still in business or have been acquired. They've brought 90 products to the market. Just incredible in terms of performance. Last year, when I did this info session, the slide said $2 billion of follow-on funding raised by our companies. This year, 1 year later, it's $3.5 billion in follow-on funding by our companies, which is just incredible. That means our alumni raised $1.5 billion this year alone in 2021, and the year's not even over yet. So it's really been an incredible year. Other things that you might look at here on the slide, we give out incubator space every single year as part of MedTech Innovator. At this point, 21 companies have found a home at JLabs, one of our partners, as a result of being part of MedTech Innovator. So they've been given a free year of residency as part of that. We've had an amazing year of performance, as I mentioned. In addition to raising $1.5 billion in funding this year, 93 of our companies closed a funding round so far in 2021. Just incredible. I will point out, if you look on the right of the slide, it says companies applying in 2021. We had 1,800 companies apply across our various cohorts. I'm going to talk about the different programs that we have, but 1,800 in total applied this year alone. So, just a huge demand to be part of MedTech Innovator. We've come to symbolize quality and access to the industry. So it's something that, people really want to be part of. The last statistic I'll mention over here is the 21 acquisitions. 21 companies have been acquired since graduating MedTech Innovator. 11 of those were this year alone. So again, we're seeing a lot of scale and momentum. 2022 will be our 10th year in operation. That's something that we're really excited about. I mentioned before that we have multiple programs. There are 3 different programs that you should be thinking about. Number 1 is MedTech Innovator. That's our US program, and that's going to be the subject of today's discussion. Number 2 is our BioTools Innovator program focused on life science tools companies. There'll be a separate webinar on info session on that as well this week. And then third, we have our MedTech Innovator AsiaPacific program, and that one is focused on companies that want to access the Asia-Pacific market as their primary market. The MedTech Innovator program on the far left, the one we're going to talk about today, is for companies, doesn't matter where they're based, but if they want the US as their primary market, that's what today's discussion is going to be about. All right, let's talk a little bit about how MedTech Innovator works. Something that you need to understand about MedTech Innovator is we are kind of like a corporate accelerator. I often refer to this as a MedTech Innovator corporate accelerator light. Meaning that you don't have to relocate and immerse with the companies that you see here on the screen, but these are the partners that you'll be working with throughout the program. These are the companies that make the decisions about who advances in our diligence process, who is part of the road tour we'll talk about, and ultimately who is accepted in the program, and then they mentor all the companies in the program. So if you are one of the lucky ones that are accepted, you'll have a chance to work one-to-one with the senior leadership of the companies on this slide, and whether they're large manufacturers or whether they're service providers, they are best of breed. That is what we are looking for. We want to make sure that you have a chance to engage with the people who ultimately will be your partners. One thing I'll mention is that I was a venture capitalist for 12 years. And a lot of the time I spent at MedTech Innovator, I spent with people like you see here on the slide, looking at companies together and talking about companies. And we'd often remark that we saw a deal that we're really excited about, but we had to pass because the company made some kind of a mistake. And that's what we're trying to avoid, is these companies that we were like, wow, great company, great team, but they made a mistake in execution. We want to fix that, but it's too late. Now the idea with MedTech Innovator, and what we've been doing successfully now for what will be our 10th year, is helping to fix those problems before they get to the point where they're interacting ultimately as a potential acquisition or an investment. So I've mentioned this now a couple times. We do not want to see great companies fail for the wrong reason. We wrote an article a couple of years ago in 2020 looking back at why healthcare startups fail. These were the top 10 reasons. If you just Google this, you'll be able to find the link to it. But we saw a very consistent set of problems that we thought you should be aware of, that where startups are failing for the wrong reason. And that's what this list is about. The one I'll point out the most is the bottom right one, number 10, staying in your echo chamber. It's something that I designed, and we've designed MedTech Innovator to correct. Most companies tend to stay in their local ecosystem, in their echo chamber for too long, meaning that you're an innovator. Maybe you're coming out of a hospital, maybe you're coming out of a university, maybe you're a serial entrepreneur, whatever it might be. You're building this thing and you're building it there locally, wherever you are. And you're talking to people who are telling you how wonderful you are and how great your product is and how great your story is. Unfortunately, a lot of those people don't want to tell you the truth. They don't want to tell you that your CEO is the wrong CEO. They don't want to tell you that your business model doesn't make any sense. They don't want to tell you that there's 15 other competitors that you don't know about that you need to better differentiate against. Whatever it might be, they either don't want to tell you the truth because they don't want to offend you, or they just don't know the truth. They don't know the ground truth that's out there. And the idea here is that we're trying to get you out of that echo chamber and into an ecosystem of people who can really help you be successful. That's what this is all about. So let's talk a little bit about our process and what this is going to be like in general for you. this is based on last year. We had over 1,100 companies apply to our US program. So that's the program that's focused on companies that want to enter the US market as their primary market. Of those 1,100 companies, we invited 200 to pitch on our road tour. And I'll tell you more about the road tour in a little bit, but just understand about 20% of the companies will be invited to pitch. Every single company that applies will be reviewed by multiple people from across the industry, usually minimally 3, and maximally it could be 30 or 40 people who are reviewing a particular company as it bubbles up in our process. And as we go through that process, these companies will be evaluated against all the other companies that are out there, plus everything that everybody knows about the companies in the industry. So we have all these experts from all over the industry who are looking at the companies and then saying, hey, I think that company should be invited to pitch. They're good enough to pitch. We'll talk about what that means in a little bit. So from those 200 companies that pitch, we review and evaluate all of them. We do further diligence amongst all of our partners, and then we choose the companies for our program. In total, in the US main program, there'll be 50 companies. We'll have some additional companies as well that are part of a pediatric cohort, which is separate, but they are merged in. So there'll be more than 50 companies as part of that cohort, but 50 companies in total. A subset of those 50 companies will be called our accelerator companies. Now, everyone gets accelerated, and so this can be a little bit confusing. All 50 companies get accelerated, but the difference is the 25 accelerator companies have a one-to-one corporate mentor. It means you are assigned specifically to a strategic or corporate partner who will be your coach, who will be your partner throughout the entire program, and you'll talk to them every couple of weeks. That's if you are part of the accelerator cohort, and those are for companies that tend to be the seed and Series A stage companies. For the companies that are Series B and later, those will be the ones that will be part of the overall cohort, part of the showcase, but you won't necessarily be assigned a corporate mentor that you need to check in with every couple of weeks because generally you won't need that. From those companies, they'll all go through our program. 5 finalists will be chosen for our main finals. We have multiple competitions, which I'll talk about. And then we have one grand prize winner at the very end who's going to win $350,000 as a first place in our non-dilutive funding. In total, we're going to be giving away $1 million across all of our cohorts, a little more than 1 million this year. And multiple companies in the US program will win prizes, but there's one grand prize winner. Just to give you a little bit of a snapshot of last year's finalists. So I said there were 5 finalists. The 5 finalists in 2021 were companies in all sorts of different clinical areas. We had a company in the cardiovascular space, Caretaker Medical, which provided continuous blood pressure monitoring. Cooler Heads Care, which is focused on helping patients, mainly women who are going through chemotherapy, keep their hair at home with a mobile product instead of the old model of doing this in an infusion center, which really doesn't work for the economics and certainly doesn't work for the workflow of the infusion centers. Biodevic is a company that's developing a hydrogel for surgery, mainly things like colonoscopy, where this polyp removal was the first indication for them, where they can maybe eliminate the clips and some of the problems that happen with that technology. Nutromics, a company based in Australia, is developing a wearable continuous molecular monitor that can track all sorts of things. It can track hormones, metabolites, and proteins with a wearable. I mean, really amazing technology. Alva Health, a company in the stroke monitoring space, was our grand prize winner. And Sandra did a terrific job of telling us that story. And basically, it's a monitor. It's like having 2 Apple Watches on, that anyone who's high risk for stroke goes home with that device because 15% of those patients have another stroke in the first 90 days. And the whole key is you want to catch them early so you can give them TPA and avoid a second stroke. And usually people don't get caught early enough, so they miss that window. But with this technology, you just go home with a couple wearables, and one of them will tell you that your arm is getting weak on one side, which is one of the first signs of stroke. So I'm just giving you a little bit of a flavor for the types of companies. We're seeing a lot more kind of in this remote monitoring and preventative and wellness space. But definitely, we're looking for implantables, we're looking for devices and orthopedics and so on, cardiovascular, neurovascular, and so on. let me tell you about our evaluation process. And that will, I think, will certainly help in understanding things. I did see a comment from someone that says, it looks like you're partial to wearables. We are not partial to wearables, but boy, does it look like it when you look at our finals. I will say that if you look across the industry, interestingly, the companies that made it to the finals part of the program definitely mirrored what we see as the overall trend, which is that 80% of the companies applying to MedTech Innovator are doing something other than a device to treat something. It's 80% of people applying are looking to do other things. They're looking at prevention, they're looking at wellness, they're looking at monitoring and all those things. We are not operating a wearables focused accelerator, but you can certainly see that those are some of the ones that are bubbling up throughout the process. But if you looked at across the entire portfolio, if you looked at all the companies that were part of our cohort for 2021, you'll see that actually the wearables were a smaller segment of the mix. It's just, those are some of the ones that had some of the most compelling value propositions towards the end, which is ultimately what helped them get into the finals. But let's talk a little bit about evaluation metrics. So we really have three buckets here: value, execution, momentum. Value is all the things that go into the product in terms of its economics, its healthcare model in general. What's the business model? We do look at the market opportunity, but we don't need a huge market. It can be a small market. We want to understand the competitive advantage. Ultimately, these are things that go into the value proposition. Who are the stakeholders and how are they going to benefit? So that's really important. Every company in MedTech Innovator has to demonstrate a compelling value proposition. And we help the companies during MedTech Innovator refine and perfect their value proposition. And ultimately, as I said, it's one thing to get to market. It's one thing to get approved by the FDA or by other regulatory bodies, or just to be on the market in general if you're not regulated. But it's another thing to be adopted. We hate seeing great companies sit on the shelf. And I can tell you a ton of them sit on the shelf because they don't offer the right value proposition. Execution. So, okay, you have great value. How are you at execution? We want to know, do you have a good team? It doesn't have to be the perfect team. It just has to be the right team for the right time. And we will tell you that your team member may not be the right person as you go through our process. We might say, hey, we have a little bit of concern about your CEO. We don't think that person really has the right experience for this particular opportunity, even though we love your company. We'll give you that honest feedback. We want to make sure it has the right team for the right time. Also, we were going to look at your development plan, the milestones that you have ahead of you. We're going to look at your clinical evidence burden and make sure that what you are defining as your clinical strategy makes sense. So that's all about execution. If you've already been executing, we're going to look at what you've been doing and make sure that you're achieving things that it makes sense for you to be doing. We're going to look to see, are you working on a serial path? Where you're doing one thing after another and not really thinking in multiple paths at the same time. We're going to help you with that, but we're certainly going to evaluate that as part of our process. And we're certainly going to look at, do you have the resources to execute? Meaning, do you have the funding? Do you have the team who can execute on your milestones? Those are the two key things. And if you don't, you're not going to make it into MedTech Innovator. Now, we're not saying you have to have raised a ton of money. We have companies that have raised $0 in equity, but maybe they have non-dilutive funding, or maybe they have a team that's working for free. Whatever it is, we just want to make sure that you have the resources to execute, because if we're going to give you all this advice and guidance during MedTech Innovator, we want to make sure that you're able to execute on that. And then finally, momentum. That's the category that is going to be the most important when it comes to things like our finals at the end of the program. But really, we're looking at things like traction, customer validation, your strategy. What is your strategy for payment and reimbursement? What is your runway? How long can your funding last? If your money runs out in a month, again, and you're not able to execute after that, that's not really a good use of our time in terms of working with you. We want to make sure that you have the ability to execute, and runway is important as part of that. But upcoming funding will also determine some of that as well. But again, I'm not saying that to get into MedTech Innovator, you have to have had pilots or partnerships or that you've already have customer validation. It certainly helps, but it's not a requirement at all. Ultimately, we're looking for companies with a prototype, at least, some type of evidence to prove that that's going to work. Could be a bench. It could be preclinical in general, it could be clinical. It might be looking at someone else's technology that's done something very similar. And so there's already a clinical proof. Whatever it is, we need to have some demonstration that what you're doing is going to work and that it's going to matter. So now, generally speaking, let's talk a little bit about our schedule that's coming up. First of all, we have January 31st, 2022 is the deadline to apply. That means you've got about 2 months to get your application in. That does not mean you should wait 2 months to get your application in. And the reason is that we pick companies for the road tour, which I'm going to tell you about in more detail in a moment. We start picking companies for the road tour in January. If you get it in at the final deadline, we may not pick you for your preferred city. You might say, hey, I really want to pitch at this local location that's near me when we come to your city. And we say, I'm sorry, we've already filled all those slots. So what you really want to do is get that application in sooner than later. Our reviewers will begin looking at those applications this month. So please, if you know that you want to be in MedTech Innovator, start your application. You can always update it as we go through the process. You can keep refining it all the way up through submission at the end of January 31st. You can keep updating and editing your application. So after the deadline, we have our MedTech Innovator Road Tour, which runs March through April. We have one final event in May, the very beginning of May, which will be just for later stage companies, and that will be in partnership with the Device Talks conference as well. In late May, we'll choose the companies that make it into our showcase and accelerator pools, and then the program begins in June. The program runs from June until the end of the program in October. We'll kick it off with our MedTech Innovator Summit that I'm going to tell you about. Then we have our virtual program, which is completely virtual. You don't have to relocate or go anywhere to be part of MedTech Innovator. All you have to do is participate. It's usually about 2 hours per week in total time commitment. And that includes watching a webinar, which you can watch either live or asynchronously. Lastly, we have the program wrap up at the end of October with the MedTech Conference, AdvaMed's conference, which we'll tell you more about. So that's the schedule. All right, now let's talk a little bit about the road tour. So the road tour is really, really a great experience for everybody. In the last 2 years, they've been heavily virtual, as you might expect, because we've had a pandemic. But to give you, looking over there on the right, most of the events this year are going to be in person. We'll have a couple virtual just to keep things convenient. But if you look at the in-person over there on the right-hand side, you'll see what these things look like. MedTech Innovator basically will convene anywhere from 60 to 90 experts that we will bring to each of our pitch events that take place in March and April. And they're comprised of our strategic partners, of investors, of clinicians and other providers, healthcare system executives in general. Sometimes we'll have people there from the FDA and so on. So we have key people, key stakeholders in the industry, might even have some patients this year who evaluate the companies, and they sit around. You see a group of people on that bottom right-hand corner of the slide listening to one of the company's pitch. So we have experts who listen to the company's pitch, they give you feedback, and then you move on to the next table with additional people who will give you feedback. And you do that table by table over a half day. And that gives you the opportunity to meet with somewhere around 30 of the people who'll be attending. And most importantly, the people you're going to be meeting with have told us they want to meet with you. So they in advance will send us a list and say, of the 30 companies that we select for a particular pitch event, these are the ones that I really want to meet with. And we basically schedule you to meet with those companies. So as you'll find throughout all of MedTech Innovator, this isn't something where we just kind of have random people looking at random applications. Everything is super targeted. Same thing goes for the online review process. Same idea. People who are reviewing your applications are going to be targeted. So if you are a neurovascular company, the person who's going to be reviewing you is someone who's interested in neurovascular. That is very important. All right. One break here for a second to answer a couple questions. One question was, what is the URL to apply? If you go to medtechinnovator.org/apply, you will find our application page. I'm going to show you the application in a little bit. Also, there was a question about physical requirements for attendance during the programs. So this is from a company that's based in Ireland. The pictures you're looking at here are from Ireland. That's the Royal College of Surgeons in Ireland. However, you do not have to travel to the US during the main part of the program, except for 2 times. So we're not like making you relocate to the US. What we have is a pitch event, which will be regional. In this case, Ireland, you're looking here on the screen. We will be back at the Royal College of Surgeons in April. And companies from Europe, that's where you're going to want to come, because in addition to being at RCSI, we also have the MedTech Strategist Conference, which we are adjacent to. And then that's the pitch events. That's in March and April. The program will kick off with our summit, which I'm going to talk about in a moment. So there's 2 events, the summit and the finals and showcase at the end, where you're going to want to be in person. All right, let's keep going, and then I'll get to some of these other questions. Thanks, guys, for asking those questions. All right, so let's talk a little bit about the MedTech Innovator Summit. So this is the beginning of the program. Once we select all the companies, we invite all of them to come to the US to be part of this initial kickoff, which we call the MedTech Innovator Summit, which is adjacent to the Wilson Sonsini Annual Medical Device Conference. If you're going to travel, we want to make it worth your time. In addition to spending time with your peers in the cohort, which is incredible, and you see some workshops and other activities that are happening here. We basically spend a couple of days together really getting to know each other, and you're having a chance to meet all the strategics, investors, and others that are part of our ecosystem, but most importantly, your peers. These are the people that you're going to get to spend a lot of time with and who are going to be your peers going forward. And as I said, these are really successful companies. They're all, they're the best of breed. So these are people you want to get to know, and that's what the summit is all about. And then we have the Wilson Sonsini Conference, which is a 1-day conference with a dinner the night before that you'll be part of and you'll be invited to. And that's with investors, strategics, panelists, and you get to showcase to investors and others during that conference. So it's a great opportunity to kick things off, get to know all these different people, get to be part of a cohort and start to form those bonds, and then get to present to investors and others. So that's the summit that kicks off the program. I can promise you it's worth the trip, and that will be in San Francisco. The program ends with the MedTech Conference. So I mentioned this before, that we have a showcase and our competition, which ends the MedTech Innovator program. And I'm going to show you a little more about that in a second here. But basically, the MedTech Conference is run by AdvaMed. They've been our partner now since 2015. And every year, we've wrapped up the program at the MedTech Conference. It's an amazing opportunity to meet with not only your cohort again at the end of the program, but with, again, investors, strategics, regulatory professionals, every kind of professional and stakeholder that you can possibly imagine will be at that conference. It is where the leadership of the industry is. They have their board meeting, which is the CEOs of pretty much every major leadership corporation in MedTech. They'll all be at the conference. And you can have opportunities to network with them. For example, our CEO dinner, where only the CEOs of our companies and the CEOs of all these large and small MedTech companies will all be together. It's a great opportunity. I'm going to give one of the team members from AdvaMed an opportunity to speak here in a moment, but just to give you a couple more visuals, this is the showcase at our conference. This is some pictures from a couple of years ago. And what you're looking at here is kind of what it looks like. You have a stage, the MedTech Innovator Showcase stage. You have an audience of people who are there listening to each of these panels. So you'll be on a panel if you're selected as an expert. You're not just there and partnering, which is also incredible, but you're there as an expert panelist. And if you're lucky enough to make it to the MedTech Innovator Finals, that's on the main stage in front of the entire conference audience. So it's a great opportunity to be there in front of the leadership. So let me take a break here now for a second and give one of our attendees here a chance to join me. So that's Beth. So Beth, if you want to go ahead and turn on your camera, love to have you tell us a little more about the MedTech Conference. So Beth.
Sure. Thank you, Paul. And I am trying to turn on my camera, but it says the host has stopped it.
That's interesting. All right, let's see. I don't see any option to turn that back on. I don't know why that is, but we'll put your picture up later. How's that?
That's fine. And I think you already did a great job of promoting the conference and talking about the different aspects for the MedTech Innovator companies at the conference. So I don't have a ton more to add other than the top. So Paul mentioned the top 50 companies will be, there's different components where they participate at the conference, the MedTech Innovator Showcase. We have some special programming for this group that typically happens the Monday of the conference through a leadership seminar. The Execution Award that MedTech Innovator also gives out happens at the MedTech Conference. And then, as Paul said, if you're lucky enough to get to the finals, that's a great session that we have at the MedTech Conference as well. So we really hope that those chosen come. We hope others that are not chosen still come. It's still a great opportunity for anyone in the MedTech Innovator family to attend some great sessions, have some great networking. And so just save the date for Boston, October 24th through 26th. One final thing I would mention for the top 50 companies, they also receive membership in AdvaMed and AdvaMed Excel, which is the division of our organization that is focused on the small company needs and advocacy and policy work. And so they do get several months of complimentary membership to become more involved with AdvaMed. And AdvaMed is primarily an advocacy association, policy association, but we also have a number of events as well, in addition to our flagship event, the MedTech Conference. So we hope to see you in Boston, and we really love working with the MTI team, Paul and Catherine and Brian and others. It's a great group, and I think we're going into the 8th year of our partnership, so we really look forward to it again, and good luck to everyone during the application process.
Thanks, Beth. And we'll figure out how to get your picture in here later.
That's fine.
All right, Beth. Thank you very much. And if there's any questions about AdvaMed or the MedTech Conference, you're welcome to put those into the chat or the Q&A, and we'll answer those later. So thanks, Beth. All right. So let's go now back to the presentation here. So I mentioned, again, the MedTech Conference. We've gotten into that. And Beth did mention something really important, which is that the companies that are accepted into MedTech Innovator will all be given AdvaMed membership for basically a year. It's a little bit less, but let's just call it a year for round numbers. And the important thing about that is you're kind of getting a double accelerator in that way. You get MedTech Innovator and all the access that we're going to provide you to the leaders and others in the industry, to the corporate mentors, and really we're going to provide you with somebody who can answer all your questions and help you with strategy and really make a difference in your company. And also you'll be part of AdvaMed, where you get a very similar kind of ecosystem, but a different, some overlapping and also a lot of other people. And that gives you the ability to sit on committees. For example, I've had many of our companies take a very active role in things like the CEO fly-ins, where they actually talk to Congress and talk about, issues that are affecting them and their company and things that they like to see changed in policy. I mean, it's really a pretty amazing opportunity. Plus you're sitting around on committees with people who have similar interests. So you're there as a peer next to somebody from Edwards Life Sciences or from J&J or from Google or wherever it may be. But people who are there from Apple who are trying to work on the same types of things. So, you're there and you're all talking about these issues together as equals. And again, that's what we're trying to do, is put you in that kind of an environment. All right, a couple last things, and then I'm going to get into the application itself. I'm going to look over at the questions here in the Q&A. So one comment that was made by David here is, it seems you're super device centric. So we are definitely a MedTech accelerator, but we consider that to include devices, diagnostics, digital health technologies, and I mentioned life science tools in our BioTools Innovator program. We have, if you looked at our portfolio, the majority are companies that are devices. But if you looked at the applicants from last year, and if you looked at the companies that we accept in the program, 70% identify as digital. And more, a lot of the device companies are digital companies, and they're digital first, and the device might be really just a mechanism for being a digital company. And we're seeing more and more of that. We're seeing device companies with SaaS models and all sorts of things. So I would not say that we're device centric. I would just say that we are a MedTech accelerator, and a lot of those companies are going to have a device component of some kind. So thanks for that, David. One other question was, can you explain the difference from David in the sector accelerators? So what if we could apply to multiple? So again, we have MedTech Innovator US, focused on companies that want to enter the US market, MedTech Innovator BioTools or BioTools Innovator, and that's for life science tools companies, people doing cell and gene therapy, proteomics and other omics technologies and sequencing and single cell therapy and so on. Those are companies that should apply to BioTools Innovator. And then for MedTech Innovator Asia Pacific, it's people who want to apply to or want to access the Asia Pacific market as your primary market. That's really the differentiation. You're welcome to apply to multiple programs. If you're somebody who thinks, hey, we've got, you got a company that could be in Asia as a primary market and could be in the US, you're welcome to apply to both, but we're only going to accept you to one program for the year. So you're welcome to apply to both. But that's really the way I would distinguish the two. Gina asked a great question. Are there any fees for applying? The answer is no. There are no fees for applying. There are no fees for participating. We're not going to charge you to go to those conferences that I talked about. That's all complimentary. The only thing you have to pay for is travel. If you need to travel as part of the program, and that's it. And you get to not only go to these road tour events, which are themselves incredible opportunities to meet with investors and strategics and others, and people get deals and financings as a result of being part of the road tour. But you get and you're guaranteed to pitch people who want to hear you pitch versus a room full of people who just happen to be there. And then you get to be part of these various conferences as part of the actual accelerator. And there are multiple ones, MedTech Strategist in Dublin, Ireland, in addition to Wilson Sonsini and the MedTech Conference, Device Talks in Boston. There's all these different opportunities. All right. One other question I'm going to answer here before I get into the application, which is, are two co-founders able to attend the events? The answer is yes. The only places where we have limitations begin with things like, so you can have 2 people come to the pitch events or 3 people come to the pitch events. Some people do. You can have 2 or 3 people come to the MedTech Innovator Summit. Everybody can participate in the virtual program itself, which are done on webinars like this. And when we have the AdvaMed conference at the end, you can have multiple people come to that event as well, but we only give you 1 complimentary member admission to the conference and a discounted rate for everybody else who wants to come to the MedTech conference at the end of the program. Other than that, we certainly encourage you to have everybody come. All right. Last thing, I'll answer this one question here, and then we'll get into the application from Robert. Okay, 2 questions. One was, if your tech is a med device, what if it's too large in its current state to be taken to the pitch? You don't have to bring your device, Robert. Some people do, and we've seen people bring it, but you don't need to do that. You're welcome to just show us slides or show us video. That's just fine. And the other thing was a question from Tina saying, are dental companies allowed to apply? The answer is absolutely. We had a fantastic, 2 fantastic dental companies recently. We had a company called Neosis who makes a robot for dental implants that was part of last year's program. They've raised $100 million or more. They're a terrific company. And again, this is a later stage company. This is like a Series C company now. But that's a company that saw value, I think a lot of value from being a MedTech Innovator. Also, Identical Implants, another company in the implant space, was part of our accelerator 2 years ago. And we have a company called InBrace that makes lingual braces that go in the back of your teeth. They just raised $100 million, I think it was, or something like that this year as well. So we like dental companies. So yes, dental companies, please apply. All right, now let's go to the application in the last 18 minutes. Please keep the questions coming. I'm happy to answer all questions that you send my way. All right, so MedTech Innovator .org is our website, medtechinnovator.org. If you go there, this is the homepage. You're going to see a thing that greets you right away that says applications are open and some buttons you can click on to start the process. I'll also point out the videos that we see over here that say watch videos from our 2021 innovators. You can watch videos that our companies make. Every company who's in our program makes a 1 minute or so video. Sometimes they're a little longer than 1 minute. That's designed to tell the story in an incredibly articulate and highly produced way. But most people don't spend any money on these videos, or they spend a very little bit amount of money in some cases, maybe to have like somebody shoot it or something. But they're really, really inexpensive in terms of what we counsel them. We teach them how to do this. But if you watch these things, you would think it was produced for $50,000 by a crew. They're really amazing. So watch those videos. It'll tell you a little more. At the top of the screen, there's a nav bar under US program, which is what we're talking about today. If you want to apply, you can go to where it says information and apply, and then I'll take you to a page that tells you about the program. You can also look at our portfolio companies from the past as well, or just read the FAQs, which will answer a lot of your questions. Under the information and apply page, you'll find some key dates, ones we've been talking about today. You'll find a link to this video that we're watching right now. And there'll be some additional information, like you can watch last year's finals. There's a link to that. You can watch our showcase and other things that are here as well. But we talk about the specific benefits, what you get out of it, and why you want to be part of this. Eligibility, what we're looking for and why. And then you'll see a button that you can click to start the application. I'm going to switch over here to what it looks like for somebody who has registered for an account and logged in. So you're going to see a screen that looks like this. In this case, it's welcoming you after you've registered. Stacy from Where Rama. This is the member homepage. Every time you log in, it'll take you to your member home. At the top, you'll just see your name and information. You have the ability to edit your information. And when you first register for an account, this is what's going to ask you for: your contact information, your location, where are you based, and then the little bio thing here just tell us a little bit about yourself. That's all you mainly need to put in. You can give us a shorter bio if you want, but you don't have to. That's optional. And then hit submit. That will take you then to the next screen, which is the company information screen. And that looks like this, where we ask for the name of your company, the year you were founded, your head count, some other things we would like to know. We want your CEO contact information. If you're the CEO, enter it again. So you entered it the first time on your profile page, enter your CEO, your info over here again, your name, email, etc., and where your company's based. And you might say, well, I have to do that twice, but yes, you have to do it twice. Because sometimes somebody who applies who's the CTO or something else in the organization, and we want to make sure we also have the CEO contact as well. So that's where you can add that information. And then we'd like you to add your photo so we know who you are when we meet you. There's a little bit of a banner here that explains the overall process and the timing. And then you start a new application by clicking this button. It'll bring you to the overview screen, where the first thing you have to do is enter the name of your product. So I'm going to say like a terrific product. I think you can come up with a better name than that. Then choose the program to which you're applying. In this case, the US program. So you click that little button, you open up our terms and conditions, which I highly recommend you read in detail. And then you click I agree and you save. That takes you to the next screen. So it brings you then to the application itself. As I mentioned before, but maybe you missed, the application is a living document which you can edit over and over again. You can come back and you can keep changing. So here's the terrific product name. You can change that. Oh, terrific product, Arama. I don't know why I keep doing Aramas today, but I am. And you'll see this little thing over here that says saved in the corner. That tells you that what you just typed in was saved when you went to the next field. We asked for a product elevator pitch. Just give us a short description of this product. So it says over here, a wearable remote monitoring alert garment for congestive heart failure disease management. That's an example of the kind of thing we're looking for. Something short and sweet in less than 100 characters that tells us what it is that you are and what you do. Keep it really simple. So you entered that as your elevator pitch. So this is our elevator pitch. And again, as I switch fields and I go to my next field over here, it'll say saved. So we know that it's saved so far. If I were to quit and leave and come back, it's all saved. So you don't have to worry about that. Product development stage, so just tell us where you are. Let's say you're preclinical. Give us a little information about over here we asked for a summary of 1 to 2 paragraphs to just, would probably copy and paste from your executive summary if you have one, but just summarize your product and your service so we understand what it is. If you have a video URL that you can provide us with that tells us about the product, that would be fantastic. People love watching videos. So if you have a short video that shows, oh, here's how it works. If you've already done that, paste it in over here. If there's a password, add brackets at the end with the password so that we can access it. Product categorization is very important. We want to know what you are. So the beginning part of this is, what's the overall category? Are you a device? Are you a device and digital company, for example? Or are you a diagnostic device? So you can check multiple boxes here. Tell us where you are in the patient journey. So meaning, like, what parts of the patient journey do you target? Oh, we're part of prevention and detection, let's say, and treatment. Whatever it is, you check those boxes. Just tell us what areas of the patient journey do you touch. That's very important. We want to know overall solution categories. These are optional, but if you're involved in like workflow management, for example, care coordination, you could say, we're involved in care coordination, or our company is also involved in clinical decision support. These are just general categories, but they help us in directing you to the right people. We also have special categories. If you're pediatric, check the pediatric box. We have a whole military partnership with the U.S. Army, where they will be looking at companies as part of MedTech Innovator. If you're military, if you have a military application, I should say, check the military box. If you're a consumer product, check the consumer box, and so on. Lead clinical categories. We want to know what is your primary category? So you might say, oh, but we could be using lots of indications. Great. On the right-hand side, this is where it says all clinical categories. So you say, well, we're cardiology, but we could also be cardiac surgery, and we could also be emergency medicine. But our primary is cardiac surgery. So that's we want to know what your primary category is. What's the main indication you're targeting? But if there's lots of other things that you're applicable for, great. Check all of those boxes. Again, this helps us direct applications to the right people. Then you'll see some more categories down here. These are also very important. We want to know, if you're a device, what kind of device are you? Oh, we are an implantable. Or maybe you're not. Maybe you're a surgical tool. Check that. Then we want to know all the device categories, so you can say, well, we're also not only an implantable, but we're also robotic. And then you say, and the primary diagnostic category, oh, we are, if you're a diagnostic. If you're not a diagnostic, don't check these. But if you are, you can say, oh, we're an in vitro diagnostic. At the bottom, you always see a little thing here that says clear selection. That's not another choice. That clears the selection. So just click that. It'll clear the thing if you accidentally did something. And then lastly, digital. If you're a digital related company, tell us how digital. Oh, we have telemedicine. And is your primary digital category, but you might say, oh, but we also, we're mobile and we involve sensors. Just tell us what, where you are categorized. All of these things help us direct you to the right people. Then we want to know some things about your funding. So we want to know what you've already accomplished and the milestones you've accomplished. So first of all, tell us what fundings have been completed. Oh, we've already done our pre-seed round, or maybe you've done your seed as well. Like, just check off the boxes. Tell us all the ones you've completed. Who's invested in you? Oh, we've had founders who've invested, and we've also had some friends and family, and we managed to get an angel group involved as well. Just check the appropriate boxes. What was the most recent equity round closed in the dollar amount? If it's, and we use decimals here in millions. So if it's 1 million you've raised, give us a 1. If you've raised nothing, give us a 0. If you've raised 500,000, give us a 0.5, and so on. And what round was that? Oh, that was a $500,000 Series A. That was our most recent round. And who were some of the sources of funding? Tell us who some of those are, and use a little asterisk to break lines. So say we had funding from RCT Ventures. That's the fund I used to work for. And we also had the Life Science Angels, if that was who funded you. So just tell us who's funded you to date. You can also tell us we had funding from NIH or wherever else. We just want to know, where did the funding come from? If you had an equity round, what was the most recent closing date? So, we closed a round in January 1st, 2021. How much funding in total have you raised to date? The other question was about your most recent round. Now we want to know in total, how much have you raised? Oh, we've raised $4 million to date, or we've raised whatever, $1 million to date. How much non-dilutive funding? We've raised none, or whatever it is. And then tell us, how long do you think your money is going to last you? We can get through, ask you what quarter. So that would be like Q4 2022. That's when we run out of money. Then we want to know what milestones you've achieved. Oh, we've completed a 20-patient POC study, and we've also we've done a 50 pig study, and so on. Whatever. What else can you do with the money you still have left? Oh, with the money we have left, we expect to submit to FDA. Whatever. Just tell us, what are the main milestones that you're going to achieve. Also give us the information on when you're going to achieve that. So we're going to do that in Q4 2022, and so on. There was a question: how should you complete the form if you're currently mid-fundraise at the time of the application deadline? Give us whatever you have currently. You can always come back later and update the application. As I mentioned, you can keep updating it all the way through the end of January when we submit. In fact, even after January, as you're moving towards the road tour, you can still come back to the application and edit the application and say, hey, there's been an update. We just closed our round. So just keep it up to date. You're welcome to do that at any time. Then we ask you for upcoming fundraising and milestones, same basic kinds of questions. How much funding are you seeking in the next round? We're seeking 1.5 million in our next round, in a Series B or whatever it might be. What's the month you expect to close? Oh, we're thinking that's going to be around 11/2022. And what are the key milestones we're trying to do? Oh, we're gonna submit to FDA. I guess we're going to submit twice because I already said that, but submit, that's what we're hoping to achieve with our next funding. Again, we're looking into the future, what's coming up. Referrals, we want to know, were you funded by the NIH, yes or no? And how did you hear about us? Paul's webinar, whatever. However you heard about us, let us know. If you've previously applied, lots of people have previously applied and applied again. In fact, companies that have won, like the one who won this year, applied multiple years before we accepted her into the program, and then Sandra just won the entire thing. So tell us if you previously applied, and if you have, what are the updates? Oh, we just hired a new CEO, because maybe that was our concern before. Then you go to the next section. The next section has some additional questions, which are related to your value proposition. So give us a short summary of your unique value proposition and what your business model is. So tell us, who's going to pay for this and how, and what your model is. Again, short description, 700 characters maximum. The market need and opportunity. We want to know what overall problem you're solving. So again, breast cancer, cardiovascular disease, whatever. Tell us what problem you're solving. How big is the market in your estimation? Give us an overall market size. What's your market access plan? So our primary market is the US, and then we're planning to go to Europe. Just give us, again, primary US, again, what quarter, these are all just things we just want to understand. What's your competitive advantage? Tell us who some of your competitors are in your estimation. Give us at least 3 of them. Your market advantage, we want to know, are you a first mover? Are you early to market, a fast follower? What's your IP status? We filed our IP. We've done our own search and it looks good, or we've had outside counsel. Tell us a little bit about your team. So who are the key team members? Again, just copy and paste from your executive summary or whatever you have as a document. Who are your key team members? What's their expertise? Formation. we want to know the story. Tell us briefly, oh, I met my co-founder because we were in graduate school together, whatever it is. We met on an airplane, whatever it is. Tell us how you founded the company, the founding team, how'd you get together? Lastly, we have some questions down here about diversity, equity, inclusion. We've been tracking this data now for several years. It's really important. So we're a female-led company, or we're led by somebody who's Black or Indigenous or a person of color, or founded by. We also want to know some things about what your initiatives are at your company. DEI is very important. So are you doing things internally as a company to improve diversity, meaning you're hiring, and how you're training people? Product is designed for diversity, so you're trying to actually particular design of your product. The community means that you're taking a role in improving outcomes in a particular community, either geographically or virtual. And the ecosystem might be your policy. Hey, we hire from diverse vendors. And then we have some questions down here about regulatory. What's the best path to describe your pathway? And so let's say we're a PMA company or de novo. Your current status, we've had our pre-sub, or we're scheduling our pre-sub. And again, you can update this later if this changes during the process. What describes your Asia strategy? Because we have an Asia program. So you're either not interested in Asia or not started, or you're same thing in Europe. We're CE marked. If you've done anything in the Asia, you can tell us about that. Lastly, I think I said lastly twice, but lastly, we've got validations and traction down here. If you participate in other accelerators, tell us who. Other competitions you've won, tell us what you've won. Any partnerships you have, oh, we've got a partnership with a certain hospital for a pilot, you can let us know that. If you're generating revenue, yes or no. How much are you generating, do you believe, next year? Put that in. And what's your revenue model? We're a SaaS model. We're a capital sales model. And who's the customer? Oh, it's employers or hospitals and so on. And that's it. I know it sounds robust. It is, but I promise you, filling this application out will help you think. And it's really the thing that we really look for. Okay, lastly, we have to have a file attached for you to submit. So we suggest your pitch deck, and a non-confidential pitch deck. That is critical. Everything has to be non-confidential. Don't write confidential on the bottom of all your slides. We will not review them. Go back in, take out the confidential slides, or delete stuff that's confidential and then submit it. We need non-confidential. Drag it into this box here, or just hit the select button and then attach your file. Lastly, you get to review and submit. The little screen here will tell you everything that you've typed in. So it shows you all the stuff that I've been selecting and typing. It tells you what's missing. So it says, hey, in section 1, you're missing your summary, which I didn't put in. So it's asking for that. And because I said NIH, it's asking for the grant number. In section 2, it's saying I didn't fill in the need or the value proposition and the team expertise, and I'm missing a file. So you can go back and do that. And then once you've done those things, there'll be a submit button and you can hit submit. That's how it works. All right. Enough of that. I'm going to answer some final questions here as we're at the hour. So let's get to this again. Someone said, I see workflow optimization is one of the strategic areas of interest. Have any startups in this category been accepted into the accelerator? Yes, they have. One other thing I'll mention over here too, that I should have shown you, which I'm going to show very quickly, is that on our website, under the About menu at the top, it says MedTech Industry Strategic Areas of Interest for 2022. This is really interesting. We survey our corporate partners and they tell us what they're looking for. So if you bring this page up, it will tell you what all of our corporate partners are looking for. This is not an exhaustive list. This doesn't mean that we only accept companies that are doing these things, but it tells you that our corporate partners are specifically looking for these things. Digital surgery, cryoablation tools, laparoscopic, and so on, workflow optimization, see, and so on. All right. So let's get on then with a couple other things over here. Someone already asked, can we attach documents? Yes, you can attach. It's required to have an attachment. What are the implications in terms of hours per week? 2 hours per week is what you should plan. 1 hour to watch a webinar and 1 hour to participate either within your group of the other people in your cohort that you're going to be talking to as part of a circle, or just to talk with your mentors. as well, which you'll usually do at least once every 3 weeks. You'll talk to your main corporate mentor, but we'll also be making introductions to other people as well as we do that. And again, it doesn't have to be the same person. You can have multiple people participating in the appropriate webinars. And in fact, if something is totally inappropriate, meaning like you're like, hey, we're not a wearable and we don't need to be part of the wearable webinar, then skip the wearable webinar. That's just fine. Someone asked, what if you're able to commercialize prior to FDA approval, but plan to seek approval? That's just fine. You can tell us that you're commercial in stage for the question that asks about that your product is on the market, but you haven't yet sought FDA. You can just tell us, you're preparing FDA, for example. What size pitch deck? I recommend, no more than probably 10 slides. But if you have a really great pitch deck that's 15 slides, I don't care, send it. We'll look through it. I'm just trying to keep things simple for our reviewers. So you don't need to give us a 30-page slide deck. You don't need to be completely exhaustive. So that's it. MedTech Innovator is designed for you from the ground up. I was an entrepreneur. I've started 8 different companies. I designed this thing to be something that I'd want to be part of. I was a venture capitalist who looked at, I don't even know, probably at this point, 30,000 companies or something ridiculous over my career. We've designed this to solve the problems that life science companies, and specifically MedTech, digital health diagnostic, and tools companies have in their journey. So it's designed for you. If you have somebody who's been part of MedTech Innovator, I would suggest you reach out to them and ask them to nominate you. We have a whole nomination process that we do for our alumni. And if they know you, so if you know one of our alumni, they can recommend you. And that will give you a priority review in our process, priority evaluation in looking at who we're going to invite to our pitch events. Most importantly, the companies who are selected to advance in that process have to have one of our strategic partners saying, I like that company, I'd be interested in seeing them pitch when we do our road tour. And then ultimately, I like that company, I'm going to mentor them in the program. If we don't have someone saying, I like this company and I'm prepared to mentor them, you will not make it into MedTech Innovator. So you're going to be on a journey as part of this process to really meet amazing people and tell them your story and have an opportunity to be part of something really exciting. There's no other MedTech community like this anywhere in the world, not in terms of just its size and scope, but also being so dedicated to all the challenges of the MedTech space, digital health, and so on. This is the place to be. So we're really excited to get your applications. Again, I'm Paul at medtechinnovator.org. If you have any questions for me, or generically, you can email support@medtechinnovator.org if you're having any trouble during the process. Thank you for joining us today. I appreciate all the questions and all your time, and I'm looking forward to hopefully meeting you on our road tour this year. Thanks, everyone, and I'll look forward to hearing from you soon.